The metallic corridors stretched before Luna like veins of a long dead creature, twisting and turning through the depths of the shattered observatory. As she ran, every footfall echoed sharply against the metal floors, accompanied by the fading hum of the failing core. The crimson and blue lights, which once flickered erratically, had now settled into a steady, ominous pulse, casting long shadows that seemed to ripple and twist. Luna forced herself to focus, the stranger's words replaying in her mind like a broken record. The core, the convergence. Each syllable seemed to grow heavier, as if weighted by some hidden truth just out of reach. But there was no time to ponder it now. Something was changing. The very air felt tense, alive. She skidded to a halt at a split in the corridor, 3 branching paths, each stretching into darkness. The faded symbols on the walls were unfamiliar, but that wasn't the problem. No, it was the shimmering distortions that flickered at the edges of each path, warping the air like a mirage. She could feel it. A vibration in her bones. A subtle pull, as if reality itself was fraying. A paradox. Multiple timelines, folding and intersecting. Luna's pulse quickened. She was standing at the convergence point. "Choose wisely," a mechanical voice buzzed suddenly from the walls. Luna spun around, heart hammering. The voice was cold, emotionless, nothing like the stranger's from before. It reverberated through the metal, making the walls seem to vibrate in response. "Who are you?" she called, glancing around warily. There was no reply, only a low hum as the corridors shifted subtly, the angles and lines bending imperceptibly. And then, a figure materialized, a translucent projection, flickering at the far end of the central path. It looked almost human, but its outline was jagged, blurred, as if it existed on the edge of reality. A hologram? "Identify yourself," Luna demanded, her hand inching towards her blade. The figure's head tilted, the projection stuttering before stabilizing. "I am Parallax, guardian of the Convergence Gate." "Guardian?" Luna narrowed her eyes. "What gate?" "The Convergence Gate, the barrier between realities." The projection's voice softened, almost reverent. "You have reached the Nexus Corridor, operative. The choices you make here will determine the path of every reality connected to this place." Luna swallowed hard, her gaze shifting to the 3 paths again. The air shimmered more intensely now, and she could see faint, flickering images at the edges of each path. Scenes that shifted and blurred too quickly to grasp, but they were there. Fragments of what could be, or what might have been. "I don't understand," she murmured. "What am I supposed to do?" "Proceed," Parallax said simply, stepping aside and gesturing to the paths. "But be warned. Each path represents a different reality. Once chosen, the others will collapse. Only one timeline can survive." Luna stared down the branching paths, a chill creeping up her spine. Collapse? Was this the convergence? She took a deep breath, forcing her mind to focus. There had to be a way to figure this out. "Show me," she said softly, stepping closer to the flickering images. "Show me what's at the end of each path." The projection paused, and for a moment, Luna thought it might refuse. But then, slowly, the air shimmered, and 3 distinct visions began to form, one for each path. Path 1, the Red Corridor. A world in flames, towers of glass and steel crumbled under the weight of the sky, cities consumed by firestorms that raged endlessly. At the center of the chaos stood a figure, a silhouette against the inferno, wreathed in flames but untouched by the destruction. It raised its head, and even through the haze, Luna felt the weight of its gaze. Path 2, the Silver Corridor. A sprawling metropolis, gleaming under the light of twin suns. The city buzzed with life. Hovering vehicles zipped between towering spires, and the streets below thrummed with the hum of energy fields. But there was a darkness lurking beneath the surface. She could see it in the shadows between the buildings, the glint of weapons hidden in plain sight. And at the heart of it all, a single tower rose above the rest, shrouded in mist. An emblem, a broken crescent moon, glowed faintly at its peak. Path 3, the Black Corridor. Silence. An empty expanse, cold and still. Stars glittered like shards of ice against a void so deep it seemed to swallow all light. And in the center, a lone station floated, its hull battered and ancient. The lights inside flickered dimly, and Luna could just make out a figure moving through the darkness. Slow, deliberate. It paused, looking up, as if sensing her presence across the veil of space. "What are these?" she whispered, turning back to Parallax. "Possibilities," it replied. "Each path is a potential outcome of the convergence. Each leads to a different reality. Choose one, and the others fade." Luna clenched her fists, her mind racing. Was this what the stranger, what he, had warned her about? The convergence wasn't just about a collapsing timeline, it was a decision point, a moment where all possibilities converged. But how was she supposed to choose? "There has to be a way to," she began, but the projection cut her off. "No path is perfect, operative. Each leads to a loss and a gain." Its form shimmered, growing fainter. But one path holds the key to the core, the true core. Luna's heart skipped a beat. The core? "The core is more than a power source," Parallax murmured. "It's a nexus, a link between worlds. The one who controls it controls the convergence." She took a step forward, eyes locked on the shimmering paths. "Which one?" "That, operative," Parallax said softly, "is for you to decide." And then, with a flicker of static, the projection vanished, leaving Luna alone at the crossroads. She stared down the 3 corridors, each pulsing softly with its own distinct energy. Her fingers tightened around the blade at her side, knuckles white. Flames, towers, stars. Each path promised something different, something dangerous. But only one led to the core, to the truth. Luna took a deep breath, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She glanced at each path again, focusing on the details, the shifting heat waves in the red corridor, the faint hum of energy in the silver corridor, and the eerie silence of the black corridor. Something moved in the corner of her vision. Luna spun around, heart racing. But there was nothing, only shadows dancing along the walls. She let out a slow breath, forcing herself to stay calm. But then she saw it. A flicker of movement down the black corridor, a faint shape shifting at the edge of the darkness. "Who are you?" she called out, voice echoing eerily through the chamber. There was no response, but the shape moved again, closer this time. Luna squinted, trying to make it out, but it was too faint, too blurred. And then, slowly, the shape resolved into something familiar. It was him, the stranger from before, the one who had warned her about the convergence. But how? "Wait!" she shouted, starting forward. But the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness, vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. Luna hesitated, heart pounding. If he was here, then was this the path she was supposed to take? Or was it just another illusion, another trick of the convergence? Slowly, she stepped back, her gaze flicking between the 3 paths. One led to fire, one to power, and one to silence. But only one held the answer she sought. Taking a deep breath, Luna made her choice. Luna took a cautious step forward, the oppressive silence of the Nexus corridor settling heavily around her. The air was dense with possibilities, and every inch of her skin prickled with the sensation of unseen forces pressing against her. She drew a slow, steadying breath and moved closer to the entrance of the black corridor. The path where the stranger had vanished. The moment she crossed the threshold, a shudder ran through the ground beneath her feet, and a low, humming vibration seemed to resonate deep within her bones. The walls narrowed slightly, drawing closer, as if the space itself was folding inward. Ahead, the darkness seemed endless, a vast void that swallowed all light. She couldn't see anything beyond a few meters, the corridor stretching into a chilling abyss. But there was something else, a whisper of sound, faint and almost imperceptible. A pulse. A heartbeat. Luna tensed, her fingers brushing the handle of her blade. She edged forward cautiously, straining to make out the source of the sound. The hum of machinery surrounded her, its rhythm discordant and uneven, like a broken metronome. And then, just ahead, the corridor opened up into a massive chamber. She stepped through the archway, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dim glow. The chamber was vast, larger than any she had seen in the observatory before. A sprawling network of platforms and catwalks crisscrossed above her, suspended in a void of swirling darkness. There were no walls, no ceilings, just a yawning, endless expanse stretching out in every direction. It was as if the room was cut off from reality itself, floating in a sea of shadows. And at the center of it all, hovering just above a shattered pedestal, was a massive, fractured sphere of light. The core. It pulsed softly, its glow fragmented and erratic, casting strange patterns across the darkness. Threads of energy snaked out from its surface, coiling and twisting through the air like tendrils of a living creature. Each pulse sent a ripple through the chamber, making the catwalks vibrate softly underfoot. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and wrong. Luna could feel it, the instability radiating from it like a dying star. Beautiful, isn't it? Luna whirled around, blade half drawn. The voice was low, calm, with a hint of amusement. A man stood at the edge of the platform, silhouetted against the glow of the core. He was tall, his features obscured by the shifting shadows, but she recognized the shape of his stance, the way he held himself. The stranger. "You?" she snapped, stepping back instinctively. "What are you? How did you?" "Always so many questions," he murmured, stepping forward. His face came into view, half illuminated by the light of the core. He was older than she had expected, lines of weariness etched deeply into his skin, but his eyes were sharp, clear. They watched her with an intensity that made her blood run cold. "I told you," he continued softly. "The convergence is coming, and you're the only one who can decide what happens next." Luna's grip tightened on the blade. "You keep saying that, but you haven't told me why." "Because," he said quietly, "you're standing at the center of a paradox, a fracture in time, a knot that shouldn't exist. Every choice you make here will ripple across every timeline connected to this place." "Every timeline?" Luna shook her head. "What are you talking about?" He gestured to the core, his eyes never leaving hers. "This isn't just a power source, it's a bridge, a point of convergence between realities, and it's breaking down.